What is the most useless thing that they teach in school? Left brain versus right brain. Not only is it not true, it just divided all the kids from smart kids to art kids. No need for that. To hide under the desk if we get nuked. Character counts. It was our school's motto. The school also actively punished honesty and integrity when it mattered, and instead held award ceremonies for students who showed basic human decency, like, hey, you dropped this in the hallway. Here you go. You will get awards for not being a piece of. But if you decide to show any real character, like stepping up for your friends when they're in trouble, you get detention. Let it be known. Erindale Secondary School in Ontario, Canada as a whole. How to take care of a baby by 1. Bringing in an egg. 2. Having the teacher sign the egg. 3. Decorating, protecting, and carrying the egg at all times for 2 days. 4. Revealing to the teacher at the end of day 2 that the egg was still intact, without cracks. All that taught me was how to take care of an egg. Ignoring the bully. He/she will go away, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Semicolon. That needs to chance. I'm sorry, but if someone is bullying my child on a day-to-day basis, my son has every right to take charge. Zero tolerance policy is the dumbest thing ever taught and implemented. All it teaches is to fear authority when you're the victim. It enables the perpetrator, who is normally a bully. I know administrators are lazy, yes, but they need to actually investigate the goddamn problem instead of saying, hey, you both were involved in the issue, so you're both going to get punished. It basically just raises you to hate authority. And while I don't like authorities either, I don't think they're all distrustful. Although, I guess this could be interpreted as commentary on how garbage authority is. Not a lesson, but they teach you to respect adults no matter what. That's how teachers get away with so much nonsense. It's how parents get away with abuse. Kids are taught to respect adults, but what they really teach them is not do anything to inconvenience an adult. Apostrophe. So a kid is more likely to keep their mouth shut if they're getting molested or beat. They need to teach instead that respect is earned and not to blindly trust people just because they have seniority or authority over you. That you have a right to make a judgment on somebody if they are doing something bad. D. A. R. E. was the single worst useless thing ever taught at school. Especially when the cop teaching said class ends up getting arrested for coke. That sticking up for yourself is wrong. I punched a kid in the face because he was being physically abusive to me. He grabbed my arms and spun us in circles, intending to let go once I would be sort of thrown through the air. I got an arm loose and punched him in the face before that happened. Instead of him being expelled, I, a female half his size, was forced to apologize for defending myself. I'm mad. The idea of ignoring bullies to get them to leave you alone. Can you run a mile in 7 minutes? WTF no? Lol. Number 4. 0 for you. That if someone's bullying you, you tell them that you don't like it. Like, no. That's why they do it. Edit. Holy moly, thanks for all the awards. When I was in primary school, we got taught about digital roots. It's where you take a number, add up all the digits and repeat if you have more than one digit. So 684 equals 6 plus 8 plus 4 equals 18 equals 1 plus 8 equals 9. Nobody else has ever heard of this. Abstinence only SX ed. Imagine if driver's ed just told you the only way to avoid an accident is to never drive a car. Our elementary school was heavy into unicycles. Gym class year round was learning to ride, then ride together, and in formation. I was one of the unlucky few who never got it. I can't dance or ride a bike either, so I suspect there's some balance issues. School all but threatened to hold me back a year until I learned how. Everyone forgot and never picked it up again as soon as they moved to middle school. Worst part is that we were a very poor school in a very rural area without much funding. I can't imagine how much the school spent on those unicycles. There was no sponsorship. And we weren't competing in anything. Edit. This was in a public school in Western Washington state in the late 80s. But I think some other schools nearby did this too. Nearby high school is MT. CHS aka the actual Twin Peaks HS. Not even remotely kidding. That the female body will shut down during RPE and she won't get pregnant. Thus babies cannot be conceived during RPE. Catholic Grammar School. Northern Ireland. I'm useless. Factually and ethically wrong. I'm from Texas. And in Texas history class we learned way too much about the Battle of the Alamo. Not exactly something they teach in general. But in my high school music class, we had to memorize our national anthem in a different language. We used to be a colony and it was originally written in the colonizer's language. And then sing it out loud with the same melody and all. Except you're parroting a bunch of words that you don't understand. Square dancing. Memorizing the periodic table. It's a table. There is no need to memorize it. All the info is there already. Square dancing. It was put into the curriculum at US schools after heavy lobbying from industrialist Henry Ford. He didn't like the awful new modern dances people were doing. Like the Charleston. My old high school decided that PE wasn't important and instead of having 2 periods where we would be exercising and learning about the human body they made us take spiritual development. I hated my old high school. Edit. I see a lot of meditation comments. No. We didn't learn to meditate. That class was about reading Bible stories to help us become more religious. It was bull. Yes, it was a private Christian school. Edit 2. To clarify. PE was compulsory until grade 11. That's when that spiritual development bull came in on PE. It became an elective subject. My friends who took it said they learned about human movement, muscles of the body and how to prevent injuries. I loved playing sports but another class that was more important clashed with PE. So I couldn't take it. That you have a permanent record and every up you have will haunt you for the rest of your school life. LMAO. Sorry we can't hire you for this position at our company. What why? Well, you threw a paper airplane across the room and M's. I learned how to do percentages wrong in economics. To ask to go to the bathroom. I don't know. Can you? Primary school, age 4-12. If 2 kids never liked each other for good reasons, the teachers used to force you to be friends, which usually made it a lot worse. So, sorry, not allowed to dislike people, even if they're mean to you. Secondary school, age 12-16. Getting good grades is more important than your mental health. In phys ed they had us take actual written tests a few times sitting on the gym floor. Questions like where was basketball invented? What are the rules of pickle? Yada yada. They're useless. That if we cover our shoulders and legs boys will stop looking at us. In my country we do religion. And don't you dare argue with a teacher or ask any questions cause Jesus is the only answer. Not to chew gum. On a more serious note, that hugging and public displays of affection are bad. Ask me how many times I got detention because of this. Chewing gum is probably not an educational rule, but rather a custodial rule. You get people in this thread saying teaching algebra or proofs is useless and simultaneously demanding that schools should teach critical thinking. People. I don't need to learn science in school. I'm not a scientist. Also people. I read on the Insta pages that vaccines cause super AIDS. My doctor said otherwise. But what does he know? I'm a mother. Abstinence only sex education. But teacher. What if I have sex before marriage? Well then I guess you'll just have to be prepared to die. My heart goes out to you poem for your sprog with the number of people saying poetry in this thread. Standardized testing. This has to be the biggest cluster of all. They literally teach kids to test. Not everyone learns the same. Why does standardized testing still exist? The more replies I read. Religious education. Move it as a component of history. Replace with critical thinking and philosophy. Because you are too stupid to get poetry doesn't mean it's useless. I've been an engineer my whole working life. But I can't craft words that move. I'm not stupid. But I hate poetry. You don't need poetry to write words that move. Give me prose. Tons of it. And stop forcing students to read and write poetry just because you hope you're going to discover that one student's hidden talent like some saccharine inspirational movie. At my school it was a whole semester on the Dewey Decimal System. This was in the late 90s too. Computers were becoming the norm but our old librarian refused to accept them and the school admin didn't care. What a complete waste of time. How to put a condom on a banana. Never met anyone who's ate a banana. That you know of. It. People who are incurious about the world we live in. If we are talking about elementary and junior high, I'd say history. It's not that history is useless. I think it's very important. But what history and how it's taught is what makes it useless. In American schools, especially K-7, we are taught a very whitewashed, watered down history that glosses over some of the more horrific aspects of American history. It's also told from a perspective of the region. I grew up in Mass but spent some time in Texas during my school years. I noticed a very strong perspective aspect when it came to history from the two different regions. This was the 70s and 80s. So maybe things have changed. But history was taught from the perspective of the southerner in Texas and from the perspective of the northerner in Mass. I guess in the end if you aren't going to be 100% honest when teaching history, then you are wasting time. We're all friends in here. Bull. School was a nightmare for me. An autistic. Addict. Depression. Divorced parents. Introvert. Gamer girl. You think your life is hard? I'm a high school junior wearing size 13 Nikes. Men's size 13 Nikes. Beat that. Our entire Indian educational system is a joke. Most of the things taught is useless knowledge to the common man. There are likely a wide variety of answers you'd get from this question. But education isn't necessarily meant to provide just a means to an end. i.e., something useful. Education is about broadening our view of the world. Teaching us what all is out there. And showing us there is so much more than what we see inside these four walls. Teaching us about what astronauts do on the ice isn't very useful information for many of us. But it's incredibly interesting. And it shows us that there is amazing value in exploration, discovery and further learning. Earth is an ever-changing and beautiful planet. And its inhabitants are even more fascinating and entertaining. We'd likely never know any of this if we didn't study and learn about everything that's here. Yes. Some of it is kinda boring, and maybe useless. But it all adds to the depth and breadth of our ability to think critically. And more objectively. About all things. Edit. Whoa. Thanks for all the colorful energy thingies. I've never gotten any of these before. Most of the BS I peddle on Reddit just crashes and burns at the bottom of the thread about 10 seconds after I hit save. In my psychology class in high school, we literally spent 2 weeks learning about 9/11. Like the event and the aftermath. Nothing about the brain or how it works. The way history is taught. Looking back on my education, I've noticed that I was taught the same historical concepts. With different content. At least 3 times. i.e. Elementary school. Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. High school. JK, it was actually Leif Erikson and Columbus was an idiot who thought he had reached India. College. Actually both those answers are wrong. No one discovered the New World. People had been here for thousands of years with massive complex civilizations. Also Chinese and Polynesian explorers had visited South America before Erikson, but we don't talk about them cause white people. I had this one class called detention. Didn't learn and the teacher was mean as hell. How to play the recorder. What are we training for? You weren't training for anything. It was the school's way for you to figure out if you have a musical inclination, without risking having kids break a more complex and expensive musical instrument. Edit. I never said it was an effective way of doing it. Diagramming sentences. Oath of allegiance. 95% of what they teach is useless. 5% is useful. The problem is, they don't know which 5% is the useful part, and it varies with each individual kid. IDK man. Gender studies. Ceramics. It's not that useless, but I don't think I have to recite the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. The Pledge of Allegiance. Making children too young to sign contracts take a loyalty oath to the government. So nationalistic and socialistic. In middle school we had a rule that you couldn't stop at your locker in between classes. Their logic was that you should be prepared with all of your books and stuff for the rest of the day. But my locker was 5 feet from most of my classrooms. I argued that it shouldn't matter as long as you're on time and prepared. My youth left me with a deep disregard for authority that continues to this day. Lol. Pledge of Allegiance was another goofy thing. Seemed like early indoctrination into the cult of US nationalism. But they acted like it was just normal stuff. Needless to say, we quickly found out that you can just sit and stay quiet and they couldn't do anything about it. Lol. The proliferation of organized religions. Particularly Christianity in the UK. My experience of religious education was it was not balanced. Not insightful, and things like common worship builds division. Being able to opt out of worship because of having a faith that is not Christian, but not being able to opt out because of not having a religion. They teach you that college is the only way to get a good job after graduating high school. And if you're a total dum-dum and don't belong in college, they still tell you to go. They set you up to fail. This is why we have a student debt crisis. Juggling. In both elementary school and middle school, we had a whole month per year dedicated to juggling and gym class. SAT prep. It was that weird period between the old SAT and the new SAT. The teacher who taught the language section of the SAT prep was a terrifying woman and I hated every moment. The teacher who taught the math section only taught what was on the old section. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college anyway. I just wanted to go to a 4-year school because it seemed respectable. My mom pushed me towards community college. She figured let me find out what I wanted to do and we wouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for introductory classes. I got my period the morning of the SAT too. It was one of the worst periods of my life. I couldn't concentrate and failed the SATs. I ended up going to community college for the introductory classes. The market collapsed 2 years later. So it was whoever could afford real college at that point. Mom also saved me from student loans by doing a HELOC when I transferred to a 4-year school. But if I had to do it all over, I'd do community for all 4 years. Poetry. More people write poetry than read it. There was a personal finance class we had. It was heavy on real estate, buying homes, income properties, being a landlord, etc. That's not in itself useless. What was wrong is they skipped balancing a checkbook or budgeting your spending. How to do taxes. How loans work. The basics that you actually should be proficient in. So graduate HS. Take out a ton of student loans. Rack up the credit cards. Most of the things in this thread are not useless at all. Some are saying it's useless to them because it's not their field of work. Which I say yes. It is useless to you. But not useless for the system as a whole. Imagine if they only taught basic algebra in college. It would take around 10 years to get to bachelor's. More for medical field if science was only taught in their college. I mean, this kind of system could work if we make the child choose what field from the start. But that wouldn't be very healthy. Plus the fact that probably most of them would want to change but will feel stuck cause they would be wasting half of their lives. We are taught all the basic concepts early because it's efficient. I personally like to know about things that are not in my field anyways. Just because they're interesting. And it makes me less ignorant about other people's jobs and the world as a whole. I mean, most stuff at school is useful, but it's all subjective to what you do with what you learn. Maths without context. Everyone knows the pi radius squared for area of a circle. Still, people don't know a 15-inch pizza will have over 4 times the amount of pizza as in a 7-inch one. So much is maths that people don't just understand. Not completely useless. I'm the opposite. I actually can't write in anything other than joined up letters. I mean, I can write individual letters obviously. But it's painfully slow compared to writing like that. My handwriting looks like a Victorian child whose hand's been damaged in a chimney sweeping accident though. I don't know. But if they don't start teaching people how to spot fake news soon, we're all gonna be living under dictatorships. Edit. Oh. My first Reddit gold. Thanks. Kind stranger. Thanks for the others. 2. Me. Feel like a lot of the history we learn is very incorrect and biased from some sources. Not only that, but some of it does not help us. I also feel like in the USA, we do not know nearly as much about our own history as others do about ours. We should probably not have as many international studies as domestic. We should at least know more about our country than others. That they have a zero tolerance for bullying, but they never help out the kid that's being bullied. Once the bullied kid fights back, suddenly they need to step in. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The Great Fire of London began on the 2nd of September 1666. Thank you. I'll avoid London at time of the year if I ever learn to wind time travel. I'm a big believer in general education. I actually work in a school and one of my degrees is a bachelor's in English. But not once have I diagrammed a sentence or needed to. And that section in 7th grade did not teach me anything new or useful about the structure or function of language. Sorry. MRS. Felon. I'm sure you put up with a ton of when will I ever need to know this in real life? Comma. And everything else was foundational practical. But this was not. Religious education. I'm from the UK, so maybe I'm a bit different. But I always feel none of our subjects are bad. They just spend too much time on things that don't matter unless you pursue it as a job. For example, I did food technology and I was not taught how to cook meals. But I was taught how to make a label showing much of the percentage of salt, etc. in the meal and how to cut down on salt. But no one taught me how to make a stew. Not complaining, I was lucky. My parents taught me how to cook basic things and encouraged me to look at more. But so many subjects are like that. With stuff that's not necessary. I really believe the first few years of high school should be things you will need in the real world, because if you leave school you can get a basic job and survive just fine. But not if you have no idea the chicken can't be pink in the middle and you die of food poisoning. If you're getting bullied, come tell a teacher. Then the teacher either does jack or they just tell off the bully and nothing more. Inoxbow Lakes. I don't think what schools teach is useless. They just tend to kind of hide the real point, which is learning how to learn and how to think. The focus shouldn't be history. The focus should be how do you learn history? What they need to do is stop being outdated. Stop making kids write in cursive if you know the world moves toward typing. Stop making kids do math in a particular way when there are usually many ways to solve a problem. Adapt. Vet your teachers to root out political nuts and glorify babysitters. Are so much to do, but it's gotta be made a priority and it just isn't. Cursive. I understand that we should know cursive to write our signature and stuff like that. But teachers back in elementary school made you think that you'll be writing exclusively in cursive for the rest of your life. What the writer meant in the piece. Like they taught me that, but I only learned what they meant but not why. A writer will write, the curtains were black. A teacher will say it as, the color of the curtains symbolize their depression and loneliness. Asterisk. What the writer meant. The curtains were black. My school in Texas had a rifle shooting class. Beat that. World. Square dancing. Used to do cup stacking in gym class. What's the point? I do not understand. Hand-eye coordination and fun. Honestly, most of gym class WAA useless to me. There were a few things I ended up enjoying, like the beep test and how it tested your limits. But a lot of it seemed to be forcing us to play sports we don't like. I can understand teaching kids such things in early primary grades. But I think once kids get a bit older, grade 6-ish, the focus should be on actual health and fitness. Not a cycle of sports 90% of the class doesn't really care for. I think the only thing we all got excited for was when the gymnastics equipment came out. Promoting physical activity is the entire point. As someone who is a former Catholic, religion, like, from a historical point of view it's interesting, but as an actual verbatim teaching of the Bible it's bollocks. I remember having double science once where they told us about the Big Bang, then after break having Ray and I'm told some dude on a cloud zapped it all out in 6 days.